Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grossi. And today, looking ahead after the ass whooping that the Green Bay Packers received by the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense on Sunday, we look ahead to the Houston Texans, in which will hopefully be a game where we get things right and start feeling good about ourselves again. But to help us preview that matchup, we have a great friend of the show, was on one of the first seasons of Packcast before there was even video, in the dark times where you just had to listen to things on SoundCloud and iTunes, but it's not even called iTunes anymore. He is the founder of the Texans Unfiltered Podcast, Mr. James Carlson.
Man, wow. I mean, that intro was just incredible. I feel special, and I appreciate you having me on.
Buddy, I appreciate you. And we're doing a little trading spaces over here, in which we just on your show, and now we're hip hop and skipping and doo-dotting all over to my show. And we got a reunion from 4.5 years ago.
Crazy.
So, James, tell the people a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your pod, and kind of like give me your story, and of course your mother's maiden name and social security number, please.
Got it. I'll give those last two first. So yeah, we started 4.5 years ago. I came on Tom's Packcast, and I said, "Wow, this is really fun. I love talking football, and there's nobody else that does it for the Texans." And I think not but a month later, I started it, and now we're a YouTube stream. We have a website. We have 3 writers, and we have press passes, and yeah, things are pretty incredible. So yeah, a Texans fan, moved to Houston the year that they became a team, and that just kind of inherited them, and I've been here ever since. And what a season to podcast and YouTube about, from the off season to firing Bill O'Brien. There's tons of things we could talk about, Tom. Just tell me where you want to start. It's a laundry list.
Yeah, this is one of those podcasts where I'm not just like, oh man, I'm struggling. I don't even know anything about this. Oh, no. We got things to talk about, my friend. We got plenty to talk about. So let's talk about the big elephant that's no longer in the room. Let's talk about Bill O'Brien. Okay. Bill O'Brien. I'm not even talking about his firing yet, because I want to savor that. I want that to be the climax.
Sure.
So Bill O'Brien, a former coach with the Patriots, right? So he's come from the Belichick tree, one of many who has gone on to other teams.
A successful coaching tree that is just always replicated.
Oh, it is. In every single area it goes. You look at the Lions, you look at the Dolphins. Yeah, I mean, it's just success abound, really. I mean, Bill Belichick obviously was just built up by these assistant coaches. 100%. Guy has no natural talent whatsoever. So Bill O'Brien, he's there for a bit. He was there for a spell. And we were talking about this on your pod, and I feel like similar to how Aaron Rodgers kind of carried the Packers through some of those seasons, you have the exact same scenario with Deshaun Watson right now. So I think my first question is, before we get to trades and all that great stuff, is why the hell did it take so long for them to not only, fire Bill O'Brien, but on God's green earth, I cannot understand why you also make him your GM. Can you in any way, shape, or form rationalize this to me?
I will do my best. I I think a lot of fans felt, after what we saw with Bill O'Brien and Brock Osweiler, Brian Hoyer, Ryan Mallett, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think there was a clear understanding that he could get the most out of his quarterback. He won the AFC South twice with those guys at quarterback, went to the divisional round with Brock Osweiler at quarterback, almost beat the Patriots. And, I think once we drafted Deshaun, I think the fan base kind of reset and said, if he could do that with those guys, he should be able to do even more with Deshaun Watson. And so, over the last 3 years, and it all started off the way that you would expect it to. In the rookie year, Deshaun was lighting the league on fire. Most people don't realize how good Deshaun was his rookie year.
Oh, he was.
He was phenomenal. He made whatever Baker Mayfield recently did, who I'm not a fan of. I think he broke every rookie record. Deshaun was on par to do that through, I think it was week 12. He would have smashed every record and still had 4 games to go. But he got hurt in the Seattle game. He was lighting the league on fire. And then, he tears his ACL, but there was a change. And the philosophy of what Bill O'Brien wanted to do was keep Deshaun in the pocket, not take advantage of his athletic skill sets and turn him into Tom Brady. And because of that, he was limited. And, the fans started to get impatient, and, it became a thing where last year after the Chiefs game, we didn't understand why he wasn't fired at that point.
Yeah.
Up 24-0 on the Super Bowl champs. There was a reason to be optimistic at that point, but once that went away, all the optimism kind of flew out the window. So what I think happened with the GM stuff is just that I think he couldn't get along with Rick Smith. He couldn't get along with Brian Game. I think Cal put it on his plate and said, okay, it's your show. And I don't think he thought that he could ruin the franchise the way that he did. I think he thought he's putting earnest on him and responsibility, and didn't do his due diligence to follow up. And in that time, Bill O'Brien traded DeAndre Hopkins, traded 2 firsts for Tunsil, got nothing in return for Clowney. And we have David Johnson as our star running back after declining 3 years. So I think that's really what it was Cal just telling him, you have nobody else to report to now. Mm-hmm. If you can't get it done, we're going to fire you. And that's what he did. Unfortunately, he set the franchise back by about 1.5 years.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is one of those things of like, hey, like, this is your last shot, right? And this is someone essentially like setting the office on fire as they're walking out.
It's exactly what he did, right?
And like, you said something that immediately struck a chord with me. And it was the fact of making Deshaun Watson a pocket passer. And, like the quick release, like get it out quick, like what have you, not really playing up to his skill set. And as soon as you said that, I was like, wait a minute, that's exactly what Matt Patricia attempted to do to Matt Stafford in Detroit.
Right.
So is that just like a Bill Belichick, let's try to get Tom Brady in here again, even though they're nothing like Tom Brady?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely part of it. That's what they're used to. That's what they're comfortable with. And people tend to lean towards what they're comfortable with. But really all Bill O'Brien had to do to salvage anything is hire a competent OC and let the OC do his job. But Bill O'Brien never wanted to do that. He never wanted to hire anybody that could potentially tell him no or fight what he thought was best. He was always the smartest guy in the room. And he didn't want to delegate. He never delegated. He took it all on himself. And that's another reason why he got fired, was just because he took on so much that he was ignoring the little details that needed to have the attention paid to him. And I think Bill O'Brien is a good coach. I just think that Bill O'Brien has to learn that he can't do it on his own, and he has to be able to delegate. And that's what good leaders do, not just in football, but just in the world in general. If you're a successful leader, you delegate, you trust your staff to do what is important, and let them do it. And Bill O'Brien just never let him do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And I think he can find some success, wherever he decides to be, I would assume a coordinator next, because I don't think anyone's going to, be like, here you go, you're going to get a head coaching job right off the gate again after what happened in Houston. But then again, Adam Gase got a job, so you never know. Crazier things have happened.
Right.
So before we get to kind of like his firing, last year, the against the Chiefs, not good. That was one of those things that I couldn't believe what I was watching when they were up by that much, because I was like, holy crap, man. Like the Chiefs, I don't think anyone expected that. And then for it to be gone in an entire quarter, you looking at this game and watching it a lot more invested than I am. I'm just watching a good football game. Was that something that was just like, okay, like he's gone after this game, most definitely. And 2, what the hell happened?
Yeah. We're a newer fan base, right? Newer franchise. Yeah. We haven't really experienced a ton of success deep in the playoffs. We had an event and watched the game together, and I've never seen or experienced myself the feeling that I had at 24-0. That was one of the best feelings I've ever had in my life when it comes to sports moments. And I'm from LA, so I'm a Laker fan. So I've experienced some good moments, but it's different with this team. So you're all the way up. Yeah. Then, like you said, within a quarter, you're just completely down, and that where the rest of this is going. And the whole mood of the event was just awful at that point. And So yeah, but I never expected him to be fired. I honestly didn't expect him to be fired this year. I thought he was just going to keep going. I thought that they would blame the defense. I thought he would say, no, this was a transitional period. I honestly never expected Cal to come down and fire him, but Cal took over the team a year and a half ago when his father died. So we really don't know much about Cal and how he runs the business. Sure. And it looks as if, he's going to run the business potentially the right way. We'll see. But he also still gave power to Bill O'Brien. So there's that part that still has an issue with me. And we still have Jack Easterby in the front office, which, a lot of fans probably don't know, but he's the Dabo Sweeney of the NFL. He's a snake charmer and an oil salesman, whatever that term would be. And he's got the ear of Cal McNair and is going to be leading the charge of the general manager search and head coach search. But yeah, he should have been fired and he wasn't. And that's just, that's what happens in this franchise, it seems.
Yeah. Because, first of all, the bad man can't hurt you anymore. He's gone. So yeah. I'm glad for you because you're like, he's going to stay. I'm like, that's an abusive relationship. So I'm glad that at least he's gone now. But the thing that kind of set the football world on fire last year was, of course, this year, was the Deandre Hopkins trade, right? That's another one where I'm looking at that and I go, no, that's not right. That's a typo. That's a misprint. That's something else. So looking at DeAndre, and obviously you're a lot closer to this than I am, was DeAndre Hopkins just wildly unhappy with within the franchise, and they're okay, because you have, for example, and I'm just gonna make this comparison. It's not perfect, but you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, right? On the Dolphins, great player. I don't think anyone, even the Dolphins, said that he wasn't a great player. However, Minkah Fitzpatrick was grossly unhappy playing in Miami. They send him off to Pittsburgh. They get a first round back. Everybody seems happy. He's doing really well in Pittsburgh, and the Dolphins, well, they're blowing up their own quarterback room, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm curious, is it was just it wasn't going to work anymore? So we had to ship him off to Arizona and the Texans just got too much heat for that? Or is there no way to rationalize what happened?
So I think there's a couple of ways that you can look at it. In DeAndre's career, I mentioned the quarterbacks that he's played with. But yet the production was always still there. The only quarterback to ever break DeAndre Hopkins was Brock Osweiler. And he had under 1,000 yards for since his rookie year. That was the only time he ever had under 1,000 yards. So when you take that, bottle it up to the ultimate competitor that DeAndre is, tired of losing, had to deal with terrible quarterbacks, finally got a quarterback, and then had a head coach turn him into something that he wasn't. And then the loss against the Kansas City Chiefs, it all boiled up. He was tired of losing. There's reports that he, after that game, went into the locker room, stood on top of a table, threw his helmet to the ground, and said that he's tired of losing in a more derogative way.
Sure.
And said that he wanted out and said it in front of the entire team. So, at that moment, is that salvageable? I think a good leader could salvage it.
Yes.
I think that that's what it takes. But I think a head coach with an ego that probably looks as if you just yelled at him in front of his children, that's the kind of guy that Bill O'Brien seems to me.
Sure.
He probably took that and said, okay, we're going to find a place for you. Then you could look at it from the financial aspect. He wanted a raise. We just redid his deal 2 years ago. We couldn't commit more to him given Tunsil and Deshaun. And then also we would be ignoring our entire other side of the ball on defense. And so, you could have made it work, but you probably shouldn't have anyways. But at the end of the day, the value received back for DeAndre Hopkins will forever be the part that I hang on to in this trade.
Yeah.
I'm not one to get emotionally tied to a player. I'm all about what's best for the team. You can't touch 4 and you can't touch our left tackle, but outside of that, everybody is movable and replaceable. But the value, David Johnson and a second round pick, sure. That second round pick turned into, Brandon Cooks, but outside of, really 2 games, we haven't seen much out of Brandon Cooks. I would have liked to have Van Jefferson, that the Rams took. There's some other pieces of considering also what Brandon Cooks is being paid. But then you look at David Johnson, who I had on the show and is probably the coolest and nicest guy you'll ever meet in your life. And he's not being set up for success now either. He could be doing better. It's the way that we run him. It's our offensive scheme, specifically with the run game, that really just damaged David Johnson. But that's never going to be enough when you look at the best wide receiver in the NFL. You should have gotten a first, considering 3 days later we saw what Stephon Diggs got from, for the Vikings. And Deandre is a better wide receiver than Stephon Diggs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny, like when I look at DeAndre Hopkins, like he's already like in my top 5 of like current wide receivers in the league, just because of exactly what you said. Whoever throws him the ball, like he still was going to make production out of it. He literally was going to turn, chicken shit into chicken salad. Like he was going to do that. So I think, like from the get-go, you obviously have the reaction of the internet just going like, wow, that's a terrible trade. But like you look at that and you're like, okay, no, that's not what we should have gotten in return for a player of that caliber. So coming into this season then, like what is your kind of reaction as a fan? Like, are the hopes like high, or are you kind of looking at this like, okay, literally like he just set the room on fire. Okay, cool. Like, you obviously still have some optimism. You're still rooting for your team, what have you. But I'm curious of just kind of like your mindset heading into this season as a Texans fan, like what your expectations of the team were.
So for me, my expectations were, AFC Championship. What we did in the offseason sucks. There's really just no going around it. I mean, it was just awful stuff happened. But when I looked at the talent on offense, with Will Fuller, if he could stay healthy, the guy's the number 1 wide receiver. It's all come down to health. And then when you think of Brandon Cooks on the opposite side, we've seen what Brandon Cooks can do. And then you finally sign a slot wide receiver in Randall Cobb, who Deshaun has never had, and he eats in the middle of the field. It's his favorite thing to do. And more than anybody else how great of a wide receiver Randall Cobb actually is.
I love him.
Yeah, right. And so you give him a reliable slot guy. You have Jordan Akins and Darren Fells. The offensive line was supposed to be 10 times better because it was the first time we had all 5 returning back.
Yep.
Titus Howard looks like he's a player. We're having some issues with the interior of the offensive line. We can get into that later. But I had expectations that we were going to be in high power offense. And then, week 1 came around and that's not what we saw. And I said, okay, we're playing the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And then we played the Ravens. And then we played the Steelers.
Yeah.
And then, so it's like, okay, at first I'm like, okay, what do we do? And then we played the Vikings. And then to me, that was when it set in that this team isn't talented enough, on one side of the ball in defense, and 2, we don't have the right coach to be able to really put us in a position to succeed. And that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
So, ultimately, I think now, it's a wasted season the way I look at it. Sure, we could get that 7th AFC spot if we rattled off 9 games like we did in 2018.
Sure.
But I just don't see that being the case because of our defense. And then the biggest concern I have now is with Jack Easterby running the search for GM and head coach. And you should go read up on him. If nobody has, just Google Jack Easterby, look at what he's done in New England and how he's been able to maneuver throughout the NFL. That's the scariest position that we're in because I don't know if this decision is going to be made properly. And I don't know if the right guys are going to be evaluated for the spot. He's going to hire Josh McDaniels and Nick Caserio, and we're going to try to run Patriots 3.0 since we've tried to do Patriots 2.0. And that's a concern for me.
It'll work this time, I swear.
Right.
Yeah, because like you could look at this and go like, okay, you know what? It didn't work out with O'Brien. Like it sucked. It happened. Let's move on. But the problem is like, we don't even know if we can get to this point of like, it's a bright future because of the people that are in charge who are going to be bringing that future to your doorstep. Right.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Yeah. That has to be incredibly frustrating. Like, cause I feel like that's just, you look at like, I'm trying to find like optimism to be like, and again, you still have Deshaun Watson, you still have a good offense, you have all those pieces. It's just a matter of, we were talking about this on your show of like, even if, you don't have a great season, you can at least look forward to the draft. But because of what happened, like, your first 2 picks are going to Miami. And then you're like, okay, well, that sucks. I guess we're not going to have that. So like, it puts you in this spot of like, you want to be competitive. So yeah, you might as well go to the playoffs because, I don't believe in the whole, like, rooting for your team to suck. I don't like,
no, we don't do that.
Yeah, that's garbage.
Yeah.
But I think it's just, you're in a really interesting position. I think if you do bring in the right guy, it could work out really well because like you said, you have the staples that are there, right? You have the staples that every franchise looks for. And so I think like those are definite positives and those are major, major positive. It's just a matter of, again, like, let's look around. And on top of that, one of the other concerning things is like, it looks like there are going to be some pretty significant head coaching vacancies after this season. And then it's a matter of like, who is the right guy? Do you have like a person who have like your eye on, like coach wise?
Yeah. So, the hot name is Eric Bieniemy. But I have concerns with Bieniemy. One, the talent on his team. Two, this is only his second year play calling.
Yes.
And I don't know if he's able to evolve and adapt. We see in the NFL every 5 to 6 years, there's a change in focus and attention on certain aspects of the game. And usually an offense will evolve and there'll be a new offense that everybody else tries to copycat. I don't want to see him try to bring the Chiefs offense to us. And, 2 years down the road, everybody's caught on. There's enough film and they're able to defend it. And then he's not able to evolve the game plan and adapt to new schemes and new play calling. And plus, like I said, the talent on the Chiefs on offense is just it's astronomical.
Oh, it's insane.
There's no other team that has those type of players on their team. So for me, the name is actually Joe Brady. And the reason why it's Joe Brady is because he reminds me of little Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan at the age of 30, 31, 32, 33 was considered to be too young, but still was considered an offensive genius. And San Francisco gave him a shot, and look at what they're doing. Joe Brady reminds me of that. He's the passing game coordinator for 3 years in New Orleans. Look at what he did at LSU, Penn State, and now look at what he's doing in Carolina without Christian McCaffrey and with, I would say, an average quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. So Joe Brady's the guy. He's 31. He's probably not going to get a look. I think he should, though. I want to take a risk. I want to swing for the fences on this. I don't want to go with comfort. I don't want to go with what everybody else is doing. I want to see a guy that can evolve and build a team around their quarterback. And that's what he's doing in Carolina. We're only 6 weeks in, so that could easily, fluff out. But yeah, I like what he's done. And that's the guy that I'd like to go after. And if not, then a defensive coach.
And I think what's on your side too is like, it's an attractive position, right? Like you look at like where there's probably gonna be vacancies, right? So you obviously have the Falcons, right? You are going to have the Jets, which hopefully, who knows what the hell is happening with them, but like, ain't nobody want to go to the Jets. And the Falcons, you're having a team where they're talking about, essentially trading off everybody and are just like, we're just going to start from scratch. You don't really know what you're getting there, right? And as we've talked about, you have those foundational pieces. Like, what coach wouldn't be like, hell yeah, I want to work with like Deshaun Watson. Like, let's do this. Like, let's essentially like build the team around him, and we get to do it from like the ground floor up.
Yeah, and I think for me, a lot of people, I've read articles since Atlanta fired Dan Quinn, and I'm sure Adam Gase, everybody's already projecting that that'll happen, and it should, sure. And then there's, a couple other ones. But when I look at every other franchise, and even though we're ranked like second or third by these writers, I don't know that there's a franchise that you would rather have. Sure, the first year is going to be a tough. You have no first or second round pick. But if that is like a reason why they choose not to come with us, then he's probably not the right guy, because that just means that when adversity faces him, he's just going to throw his hands up and walk away. I want a guy that can come in and be able to work with what we have, see the potential, and then make it work. And then as we get going through the seasons, be able to add the talent that is needed. But, I think this is the most talented team that is available for a head coach. I can't think of another team in the last 5 to 6 years that have had a franchise quarterback at the level of Deshaun Watson and is available.
Yeah.
I can't think of it. I was trying to do it last night. I looked back. I didn't find anybody that has been fired and had the talent at quarterback like Deshaun Watson. So that's enough. But then you look at, Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil and, just Zach Cunningham and Bradley Roby and then potentially Gary and Conley. So there's players there that you can build around. And I do think it's the most attractive job in the NFL. I don't see that changing unless there's a surprise firing. But I do think this is the most talented team that's available for a head coach right now.
Yeah, no, I think I would definitely agree with that. Just in terms of like, you don't have to start from like square one, right? Like I don't have to go and try to find a quarterback. I don't have to, because like, again, the first year, yeah, it's going to suck, right? Like it's going to be tough. You're not going to be able to do a lot because of the cap, because of the draft, what have you. But like, this is a team that you can put like your mark on from like the beginning. You look at like the Packers, like that job is available and Aaron Rodgers is still playing really like, yeah, of course. Like, sure. Sign me up. Like I'll go play with Aaron Rodgers and we'll do something. So I think it's holding on to that, but I agree, it's just a matter of the personnel that you're actually going to wind up bringing in. So all that being said, you have a monstrous first bit of the schedule. Like you are just facing just complete monsters. And then the Vikings. But kind of heading into this week, you and I spoke about this on your pod and talking about like, what the Texans are going to need to do and what the Packers are going to need to do, what have you. We both don't have great run defenses. Those are not really there. And this has potential to be a high scoring game. So to kind of like not go over everything, but can you kind of tell me like, how can the Texans win this football game from your standpoint?
Well, so it's interesting when we talk about the run defense because it's really related to gap discipline and poor tackling. So while the talent isn't top tier talent, it really is just more of the basics and the fundamentals that are causing us to be able to give up these huge runs. So if there's a way for them to fix it this week, I would hope that they can. But just what we've seen, this has been an issue all season. If they haven't fixed it, since then, I don't know why they would fix it this week. But if they do, then I think it would be a little bit of a different game. If we could slow down the run, get a lead early, make you guys have to abandon the run. I do think Deshaun can go toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers. We've seen him do it with Russell Wilson. We've seen him do it with Tom Brady. I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility. It's just going to come down to this offense really getting going early, which hasn't happened yet this season. First 2 or 3 drives, we have not seen this offense come out ready to go. That's going to happen for us to have a chance against the Packers this week. We're going to have to put 7 up on our first drive and then just play some fundamental defense. Get back to tackling, stick to your gaps, stay disciplined, and take away the run. If we could do that, then I think that there's a chance. But really, that's all it boils down to. I don't think that there's anything else we can do. And honestly, like we talked about in the last show, our corners aren't very good either. So that doesn't give me any optimism to think that if we do stop the run, Aaron's going to be able to just pick us apart. But with your injury to the tackle, with David Beck, I'm never going to say his name, so I'm going to say David, and I'm going to let you say it. There we go. And then, with him potentially being out, I feel pretty good about the pass rush being able to potentially get to Aaron Rodgers, which maybe will make our secondary look better, which it's the greatest compliment you can have to a secondary.
Yes.
So I think there's a chance, a very slim chance. But if I had to bet money, I would bet that this is a get-right game for you guys.
Yeah. I hope it is. Because, listen, the reaction from the sports world after we had our one loss, it wasn't great. It was the amount of people who are just like, well, everything we did in the beginning of the season is trash. It's garbage. It doesn't count. And the Packers are frauds. And I was like, cool, we're back to this again. Love it. Absolutely love it.
They seem to forget that the Bears just destroyed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the week prior, but whatever.
So here's the thing about that.
It's funny how that happens.
Yeah, right? It's crazy. Yeah.
To Nick Foles.
Nick Foles.
Right.
Yeah, I know. I know. The last question I have for you is regarding your division. Your division, the Titans, they made 9-7 finally work. It finally hit for them. You have a mustached man in Jacksonville, so that's not really much of a threat whatsoever. Looking at your division, why can't you be, even with all these problems that you're mentioning to me and talking about, do you still have optimism that you can win this division?
I think the optimism is there for this week. I think after that, the optimism kind of has to kind of go away for the rest of the season. And it sucks for me because that's not who I am. I'm a very optimistic person. I try to be positive in everything that we do. And that's really what we've built our brand on, because it's always easy to point out the negatives, but it's the hardest to point out the positives and what else you can do. So I think if we can come away with a win this week, I think that's something you build on, and I think we can do it. I don't know if we can win the division, but I'll tell you this. I don't think the Titans are as good as people think they are. I really don't. Their defense is absolute trash.
It is. That's my one focal point on them. It's just their defense they weren't pressuring Watson at all last week. And I turned the channel when Will Fuller was literally just standing there hey, a guy 10 yards back. And I'm like, that's not the sign of a good defense.
No, their secondary is bad. Their linebackers are bad. The best thing they have is Jeffrey Simmons. But outside of that, their defense is not very good. So I don't buy them as true contenders. I know Ryan Tannehill is playing out of his mind right now, and that's great. But I've also seen Ryan Tannehill play out of his mind and then come back down to earth. And I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens. It may take a small little injury to A.J. Brown or something of that sort, because when you take away a guy like Ryan Tannehill's number one wide receiver, I think then you have to worry about Ryan Tannehill, because AJ Brown, a lot of people may not realize how good he actually is.
Oh,
but this guy's a future top 10 wide receiver in this league. Yeah. Great route runner, great speed, great catch radius. He's going to be a player. So I just don't buy the Titans. The team that scares me the most, and I've been saying this for the last 6 weeks, and I still buy into it, I said it in the offseason, is the Colts.
Really?
I understand that Phillip Rivers is not playing what we thought Phillip Rivers could. Yes, correct. The worst throwing motion in NFL history. But I do think that as time goes on, he's going to get more comfortable. I do think that he has weapons. I do think he has a great head coach in Frank Reich. Their defense is what is going to get them the furthest. They have a very, very suffocating defense at all layers. And so I think Phillip Rivers eventually gets it right. I mean, he looked good on Sunday after being destroyed by the Bengals, came back from nothing. Now it is the Bengals, so what does that really mean? Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's things like that really, that's what teams build on, and they start to really make a name for themselves. And that defense is enough to make me think that it can happen. I think the Colts end up winning the division. I think the Titans come back down to earth. And if there's any chance of us winning the division, it's got to start this Sunday, because after that, it's too big of a hole for us to come out of.
I hear you. James,
yeah,
it's been an absolute pleasure. We had you on 4 years ago. We're bringing it back, and that's it. And keep crushing it. I appreciate you coming on, and tell the people once again where they can find everything that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can go to TexansUnfiltered.com for any of our writing pieces. We do a lot of stuff based on film. So we don't write a lot of fluff pieces. Really, we just go break down the film and show you what we see. This week, we did something on Titus Howard and Jadeveon Clowney, how we held him at bay. Probably be very interesting for you guys to look at, considering Preston Smith will likely be going against Titus Howard. And then you can follow me on Twitter at HoustonFBPodGuy. And you could follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at HoustonFBPod. And then you can find the podcast on any podcast platform. Just search Texans Unfiltered. And Tom, pleasure being on the show. Literally, thank you for just giving me the motivation to start this. And I'm just happy that I'm here 4.5 years later still talking about Texans. So thank you, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. We'll see you in 4 years again.
We'll just do. Sounds good.